detail. And now, George the Tech Whittam.
Thanks, Martha. My old pal, Martha. She is an awesome talent and an amazing coach and a great friend. So anyway, let's get to it right away. This is iZotope RX Standard. This is a beginner's guide for voiceover actors. Of course, it applies to many other people, but this will really be friendly to voice actors, maybe people who are less familiar with software that works like this, or even what a plugin does. So we'll kind of cover a lot of ground here. And hopefully you guys will come out of this feeling a lot more confident about using it and knowing, that at the end of the day, if it sounds good, it is good. You have to use your own ears. And sometimes you need to know when you shouldn't use it. Sometimes it's just as important to know when to not use it as when to know when you should. And I'll explain what I mean by that later. But adding things to your audio, layering things on when they're not needed, never works out to your advantage. So it's really important to have clean audio whenever possible. Well, I did ask for submissions of audio beforehand. It was kind of last minute. It was a last minute idea to do it. So maybe a couple of you saw that. But Greg is very observant, saw the note in the email and submitted a file. So I'll be using Greg's file today. If somebody else sees that email and sees the Dropbox upload on my website, you can also add a file. Maybe I'll get to more than one file during the demo. And if your file is, well, let's just put it this way, less than great, that's even better. If your audio already is amazing, like Jonathan's, it's not going to be much to fix with iZotope. But if it's something you recorded while you were traveling or on the road, it's going to be there's going to be more that I can do to try to fix it. It's also good to demonstrate when fixing things makes it worse. And there's a certain point where you can't salvage something. It's not going to be usable if you overdo it with trying to fix it. So at the end of the day, you have to trust your ears. So we got in the poll here today, we've got 2/3 Mac, 1/3 Windows, which is pretty typical. More Mac than Windows than I usually would see, but that's fine. This is completely universal, so it doesn't matter whether you're on Mac or Windows. Both types of users can use iZotope. We've got some folks who haven't even installed it yet, so I'll give you a brief tutorial on how the installation works. There's a just got it now what option, and quite a few of you are in that boat. You probably saw the webinar announced and thought, what the heck is that anyway? I keep hearing about it. Should I get it? Maybe you did, and then signed up for the webinar. So that's a great idea. Some of you have used it for a while and you want a few more tips, and there's a handful of you that have used it quite a bit. And well, hopefully you'll still come away with something from today's webinar. If you have questions, put them in the Q&A box. If there are things specifically you want me to address. And it looks like I've got my helper Kimberly today putting those into a spreadsheet in Google, which is even more slick. So I will refer to that spreadsheet where I've got a few questions that were emailed to me in advance of the webinar today. All right, well, we'll get into it. Not everybody's here, but I don't always expect everybody to show up. That's why we offer the recording in post later on to review. So that happens. A lot of folks, a lot of you are working voice actors, and guess what? You get bookings. It's a good reason not to make it live. Anyway, the agenda. What is this? What is iZotope RX anyway? Versions and ways to purchase. Installing RX Editor and the RX plugins into your DAW, your audio recording software. A tour of the editor program so you can get an idea of what's going on in that. It's quite complicated, has a lot of its own features. Some of you may use the editor a lot. Some of you may never use the editor, and I'll explain why you would use it or not. We'll have a tour of all of the plugins and functions that come with the editor. I'm not going to go through every single plugin because, frankly, it would take more time than we have today. And there's a lot of plugins in there that are really not relevant to what you guys are doing in VoiceOver. And that's why I made this a VoiceOver-centric production, because I want to focus on certain features, not try to cover every single feature in iZotope RX. We'll check out the spectrogram view and go over what it does. Then we'll go into my suggested settings, where you might start with setting some of the plugins so that you have a good idea where you should begin from. Sometimes it's the default settings, and oftentimes it's not. I find the default settings from iZotope are pretty off base sometimes, overdoing it, so to speak, adding too much of one thing or another. Then we'll get into understanding how chains and batches can automate your life, making production so much more efficient if you have to produce a lot of files, more than just one. You'll appreciate the chains, and then, well, everybody will probably take advantage of chains at some point, but the batches will really are for producing multiple files relatively quickly. Can we fix it is the demo point where whatever files that I was sent, I will take a listen to. And I did get a few samples submitted, so I will look to those for examples, and we'll bring them in, and we will try to fix whatever is in those files if there is something to fix. And then questions. So what is iZotope RX? It's both a plugin and a host. So a plugin is something that works within your recording program. A host is a program that can host other plugins. In other words, allows that program to use other plugins from other manufacturers or even from the same company. So it's both, actually. When RX came out, it was only a plugin or a suite of plugins. So there was like the declicker, the denoiser, things like that. But once they added the editor, it became a lot more of a feature full program and became basically a simplified DAW of its own. In fact, you can actually not just edit, you can even record directly in iZotope now. Not something I've actually done much of yet to experiment with whether I like it or not, because I have my preferences. I like Twisted Wave, I like Adobe Audition, but it's just another alternative. Let's say you already have a very complex DAW like Pro Tools or Logic, and you want to do something very quickly, you might find it useful. The current version of iZotope is version RX9. That's the one that you can buy right now from their site or off online from other retailers. They do release new versions annually. 9 is the current one that was released relatively recently. If you're on RX8, just about every single thing we do today will be relevant to you. You don't feel compelled you have to upgrade to 9. As you get into older versions, more and more things are going to differ as you get older and older, but a lot of it's going to be common. Now, there is another version called RX Pro, and I'll get into that in a minute. Some of you may be on RX Pro and wondering, well, wait a minute, what's that? Wait, it's not 9, is it? Or is that 9? What is it? RX Editor can edit and process audio using RX plugins and other plugins from iZotope and other brands, as I mentioned before. So it's a plugin suite and it's an editor software of its own. It's really intended as a restoration program. It's for cleaning up and restoring audio that wasn't recorded very well or was recorded on a bad medium like analog, a poorly recorded analog tape, vinyl records, things like that. But we've adapted it to cleaning up audio that we recorded in our studios that is sometimes less than pristine. So that's what RX is really intended for. I generally don't use it as a compulsory processor. I use it as a problem fixer. That is how I mainly use it. So I don't recommend, again, using it on absolutely everything, because programs like this can actually slightly degrade the audio, especially if you use it incorrectly. Really, again, reducing noise, restoring the audio and reducing noise that's already in the audio is its primary function here. It's all about getting rid of artifacts, clicks, noises, buzz, hums, rumble, hiss, plosives, digital clicks, even clipping to a degree. There are tools in RX to fix all of these things. And philosophically, it is always better to fix these issues from the source whenever possible. Again, when this was developed for others who are producing audio, who receive the audio and are stuck with whatever was sent to them. They don't have the luxury of going back to the set or going back to that actor and having, can you record that again in a quieter room? That was who it was really designed for. So we've adapted it as a way to scrub up and clean our audio and make it the best it can be. And sometimes people overdo it. Let's just put it that way. Again, the more aggressive you're processing, the greater there are artifacts. In other words, things that detract from your audio, that distract from the original clean audio or from the tone of your voice, that actually muffle it, mute it, make it sound strange, alien, robotic, and things like that. So I'll say one more time, always do your best to reduce the noise from the source first, whenever possible. So